The Myrtle-Lopez's recently took a trip out to Lake Segunda State Park. Isabella was blown away by the beauty and how many recreational opportunities the park unlocked. Raul was impressed too, but for a very different reason. Nobody was taking advantage of the massive development opportunities surrounding the new reservoir. And in Raul's mind, if water was the region's limiting factor before, now it's just money and ambition, two things he has in spades. And even though he's supposed to be done with development, he can't help but see the parallels to what they built in Segunda Beach. Just imagine it, the chance to build a brand new community from scratch and turn it into one of the most important tourist destinations in the entire state. It's bold, it's risky, and Raul believes that he can make it happen. He decides to float the idea to Isabella, expecting her to shoot it down. But to his surprise, she was already right there with him, napkin sketch in hand, laying out a new town just east of the reservoir. But sharing the vision's only half the battle. They need to quietly take control of the land. Good thing that the Myrtle-Lopez family has ways of making things happen. And within a few months, they lock up enough property to break ground on what they're calling Lake Valley. And today, we're gonna build it. We'll begin by laying out the city, and then we'll pack it full of tourist attractions. Then, we'll bring transit into the area so that visitors can reach it. And we'll finish up by detailing every last block to make sure it's the most beautiful place that it can possibly be. Plus, I'll be debuting a brand new building technique that chat shared with me on stream last week, one that will completely change the way I approach this build. And if you're excited to build a tourism-focused city, hit the like button. And if you're even more hyped for the Chinatown build coming soon, hit the like button for that too, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Or leave an emoji representing tourism for the sake of engagement. But before we jump in, lately, I've been working hard to lose weight, watching what I eat, getting in workouts when I can, and trying to stay consistent. And one of the things that's really helped me stay on track is today's video's sponsor, Factor. Factor's Calorie Smart meals all have 550 calories or less, and they've been a game changer for me. I don't have to cook, prep, or portion anything. Just grab a meal from the fridge, heat it up, and I'm good to go. And let me be clear, I'm not compromising on taste. These meals are genuinely delicious. And that's because all of Factor's meals are chef-crafted, restaurant quality, delivered straight to your door, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. Check out this green chili queso and chicken thigh fusilli I had for lunch today. This absolutely delicious meal clocks it at only 500 calories, and it filled me right up. You're not looking for low-calorie meals? No problem. Factor offers 35 fresh meals every week to fit almost any dietary preference. Whether you want Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, Vegan and Vegetarian, or just want the chef's choice, Factor's got you covered. If all that sounds good to you, check them out by heading to factor75.com or click on the link below and use code 50cityplannerplays for 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's 50cityplannerplays at factor75.com, 50% off plus free shipping. And remember, using my link and code helps us support the channel. And if you do, thank you. I really appreciate it. And a huge thank you to longtime channel partner Factor for sponsoring another video. Now let's get back to it. Our build today has a lot in common with our previous build, in that it's pushing me way outside of my comfort zone. And that's because I've never really planned for a community like the one that we're about to build, and I've never taken on a project quite like this in City Skylines 1 or 2. When that happens, I always find it helpful to look for real-world inspiration. And today, we're gonna be taking notes from a place that fits almost perfectly. A community built in a narrow valley in the western US with an economy that's heavily based on tourism, Park City, Utah. The primary reason we're taking a look at Park City is the geography is really similar to where we're going to be building today. It's a long, narrow city, about 4 blocks wide in some of its narrowest sections. And because their economy revolves around tourism, it's developed a building pattern that I think we can definitely take some lessons from. If you're unfamiliar with Park City, it's probably best known for skiing, for hosting Winter Olympic events, and of course, for being the home to Sundance Film Festival, at least through this year. Now, a few observations from Park City are shaping today's plan. First, the blocks are very narrow and irregular, which is especially interesting because early maps, like this old Sanborn insurance map, show a wider layout than was actually built. I guess they were forced to respect the topography. Second, despite being a small city with just over 8,000 people, there's way more density than you might expect. Third, I find the way that Highway 224 approaches the city to be very interesting. It enters above the city's elevation, and as it enters the city, it connects to the local street network with a roundabout. Fourth, the streets are very narrow, and outside of Main Street and Sweet Alley, you'll notice very few sidewalks. And on the south side of the city, you'll notice that Main Street has a lot of residential uses before eventually evolving into the mixed-use downtown that's a little bit north of there. So here's the inspiration that we're taking from all of this. Obviously, we can't build a ski hill. We couldn't do that in City Skylines 1 either, but we do have theaters from the Leisure Venues Content Creator Pack, as well as plenty of other tourism buildings that we can work into this town. And we're gonna jam as many of those things as we can into this community. Our blocks are going to be very narrow, just like they are in Park City, just 4 units wide in most places. We also won't stick to strict uniform block lengths. Our main street will be a regular road, but every other street in the city will be an alleyway. This will keep our grid narrow, and it'll mean that we don't have sidewalks on most streets. We're also going to be sure to have lots of residential uses right on Main Street. Another big choice? I want to build the highway after the grid is established. That way, we'll be forced to make compromises, like having the highway enter above the city, just like they did in Park City. And even though the town will be small, we're going to give it a surprising amount of density, taking another page from Park City's playbook. Finally, one more important planning consideration. We can't cul-de-sac the city. To that end, we're going to build an additional outside connection, which will de-cul-de-sac the city while also bringing a ton of traffic into the town, which I think will help it feel more alive. We also need to build a direct link to the reservoir. This is the reason that the community exists after all, but it'll also help bring traffic into the state park, which I think will help it feel more alive. I also think it'd be smart to build at least one connection into Segunda Beach, maybe somewhere near the landfill. But before we can do any of that, we have to purchase our map tiles. And because of the way that I've laid out the map, we're going to need to buy 4 of them, because the valley is right in between the map tiles. This will cost us $1.5 million and a shade under $250,000 a month in tile upkeep, which puts us solidly in the red. We're gonna need to get building and quickly. So with some real world inspiration in mind, the tiles purchased, and a rough plan sketched out, let's move on to building our roadway network. We're gonna be building our entire transportation network around our main street, so that's what we have to build first. But before we can build Main Street, we have to do a bit of grading. And that's because as it currently sits, there aren't really any buildable locations within this valley, so we need to create them. Now, I know it might feel a little bit dirty to do a whole bunch of grading, but you have to remember, in the real world, before anything is built, grading occurs. So it's not that big of a deal. In fact, it's actually emulating reality, and things are gonna look a lot better if you do grading up front. So I know that my top height is gonna be over here, 124 meters, and my lowest height is over here, a little under 90 meters. So I'm gonna wanna slope from this location down to our low location, but I don't like to do that in one big swoop. I like to do it in small little segments. So I'm gonna grab a height over here with 100 brush size. That's gonna be really important. I don't wanna have a smaller brush than that and not great enough that I can't build anything. I'm just gonna create a height right here, create a flat pad, do the exact same thing down here. And I'm gonna try not to push any more than 5 to 10 meters out of the way. That'll be how I know that I've gone too far if I could do any more than that. And then we'll slope in between these heights. And I'm just trying to follow the contour lines so I'm not carving into the hillside too much. This will make it look nice and natural. Now I'll take this exact same concept and do it in the rest of the valley as well. And now we're ready to draw our main street. Now for this, there are only a couple of options I care about. I want to make sure that I have grounding on and constant slope. This will keep things sloping downhill. And then I want to turn off snap to guidelines because that's going to screw me up as I attempt to build this road. Now, as I build this, I want to draw a bunch of straight segments. And that's going to be really important if I want to have nice tight grids. So we are going to draw small segments like this so that we can link them together afterwards. Now we're ready for our side streets. And for this, I want to get rid of all the snapping options except for snapping to zoning grid, 90-degree angles, zoning cell length, and existing geometry. We'll use our alley for all of these. And then I want to zoom in nice and tight and make sure that we're giving at least 4 units of separation in between Main Street and all of our side streets. And now we'll link all of our side streets together. And for this, we'll just use the curved road tool and snap to guidelines. And now I want to create side streets and fill in some of our awkward gaps. So for the most part, I'm going to find where our nice clean blocks end, and we'll add a side street there. And this will be the bare bones of our grid. Now there is a decent chance that we reconfigure this as we place some of our signature buildings, but this is a nice starting point. So let's move on to building our highways. And the first one that I want to build is going to be the road out of town. So for all of our roads, we're going to be using our 2-lane, 2-way highways. And I want to make sure that we have constant slope and grounding on. We're also going to make sure that we are using our continuous tool for most of these. And I just want to follow the contour lines. One connection down. For our next highway, I want to snake through the hills here and make a connection to our expressway. This will be the quickest way to get to Segunda Beach from this community. So I think that we'll begin right here. And it's going to be too steep if I don't do a bit of grading. So just to get to this location, we're going to do a bit of grading. Then we'll let constant slope do the rest of the work for us. And I tried my best not to smooth out all the cliff sides here so that it looks like we blasted into the hillside to build this road, and I think the effect is really nice. Now, I want to build a roundabout right here so that we have a nice transition in between our local roads and this highway right here. And I'm going to go with a large roundabout because trucks would use this, and I don't want anything in the middle so that if a semi goes through the roundabout, they're able to drive right over the top. And then for our final highway connection, I want to link this highway right here into this area. And what I'm thinking is we're going to begin maybe right about here. And then I'm going to call a mulligan on the entry into the park. We'll prioritize the movement along this highway rather than the entry into the park. Now for our connection in Lake Valley, what I think we're going to do is turn the highway up right here and then stick around this contour line, loop around the side of the hill here. And then where we have this little divot, we're going to use that to curve in a little bit and then meet down right here. So that means that there will be some traffic that is forced to drive on a local street, but I think that that's totally rational, especially in an area that's as constrained as this. And then there's one more highway connection that I want to make, and that's going to be right at the end of Main Street because I feel like we have to have another connection into this highway. So we'll do something like that, and now there are multiple ways to get into town from the highway. This is going to work out really well for us. And then our final roadway connection is going to be in between Lake Segunda State Park and our new highway right here. Now this is a purely cosmetic road that's going to bring traffic into Lake Segunda State Park. So I'm not going to worry about purchasing the tiles, and I'm able to build outside of the tile area because I have Anarchy on. And for this road, I'm just going to snake my way up this canyon right here. And then lastly, we have to build a ranger station, and I think I'm going to build that right up at the top of the hill here. And initially I was thinking I would do something larger than I've done right here, but ultimately this is a side entryway into the park. So having a really simple gate, a sign announcing that you're in the park, and a turnaround just in case you don't actually want to go to the park is all that's necessary here. And with our roadway layout in place, let's move on to plopping our tourism amenities. I have a sneaking suspicion that many of you are surprised that we're going to be plopping a whole bunch of tourism amenities right now. Generally, I like to build my city first and then add buildings like that afterwards. But if you think about it, Lake Valley's entire economy is supposed to be based around tourism, so it stands to reason that we would plan the city with these amenities in mind. We're going to be plopping a whole bunch of leisure venues assets, a whole bunch of hotels, a whole bunch of parks, and a whole bunch of city service buildings, and then modifying our existing grid to conform to those assets rather than doing the opposite. And this is going to be really important because I want tourism amenities to be available no matter where you are in the community. Well, a one-block walk max. So we're going to be placing a number of these assets throughout the entire community. And what I'm thinking is we're going to have some of the lower density amenities over here. And then as we work our way towards this roundabout, we're going to step up our densities and have some of our larger assets. Now my hope is that adding all of these amenities and hotels turns around our budget situation because we've been losing a lot of money the entire episode. But I think that placing these assets is going to change that. And the nice thing is that most of these are free. Most of these are signature buildings, which cost us nothing. I want to begin with an asset that is a bit of a nod to Park City, Utah. I want to add the Majestic Theater. I want to imagine that Lake Valley has a film festival scene, and this is going to be the focal point of that. So we're going to place that right in the heart of our community. I've wanted to give this asset a bit of room to breathe, so I've eliminated all the roads around it. And now I'm going to send a road behind the asset and up the hill to unlock all of this area up here. I decided to spend a fair amount of time on this asset, making sure that the lot is graded appropriately, that there's retaining walls so that the assets aren't contorting to the roads. And this is the level of detail and care I'm going to give every single asset. Now, we're going to go into even more detail once this is fully situated. We'll make sure that there's no janky bits anywhere near these. Again, the focal point of the community. Now, along with that, I also want to think about the needs of the people using these amenities. So for this particular asset, you figure if there's a film festival, this little teeny tiny parking lot in the front is probably not enough. So I'm going to do something that's pretty uncharacteristic of me, and I'm going to place a structured parking lot right next to this. And that's just a nod to this being a tourism-focused community that could probably afford this sort of structured parking, where the land is going to be much more valuable than anything else, which is why we wouldn't want a big parking lot. I'm going to place that right here, but there's one modification that I want to make. Right now, this is kind of built on a hill. That doesn't make a ton of sense. So I'm going to add a road right here. We basically leveled all of this to Main Street level, which I think makes it feel like it's more connected to this facility. Now, additionally, if we were going to have a film festival, we would need to have some sort of a hotel. People would need a place to stay, probably within close proximity. So I think I'm going to add the Northeastern Inn right about here. And then, of course, we have to factor in parking, so I'll place some of that right next to this facility. And the hotel will apparently be much more okay with surface parking than the theater. But before we go any further, I'm going to add our connections for water, power, and sanitary sewer, and I'll place these underneath the road, right where they belong. And that is much better. Next, I want to zoom out just a little bit and think about what would be in the areas surrounding this. And I think that we might see a really nice hotel up here. So I'm going to place our 3-star country hotel right on this bluff right here, and then we'll work a road up to it. And I have a sneaking suspicion that this would be a very popular hotel because of its location. And our next amenity is also going to be very popular. I want to build a brewery. So we're going to place that right on top of this bluff right here. It's difficult to see, but right here, if we grade things out a little bit, we should have a nice pad for our brewery. Now I want to make sure that we've got lots of parking around this. So I'll place some in the front and then some along the side as well. And I think I'll place one more tourism amenity in this area, the Mermaid's Tea Lounge. And I'm going to place that right about here in what would be a fairly undesirable parcel. And to try to compensate for the location, I'm giving them a sound barrier and a parking lot right next to their building. Now across the street from there, we've got to reestablish this road that we broke earlier. And then in this corner right here, I want to do something special. And I've tried to make it feel like there's some sort of semi-permanent farmer's market right here next to this parking ramp to give it even more utility. Moving over to this part of the community, I want to add some city service buildings. I'm thinking a fire department, maybe a clinic, and definitely a transit center. And then finally, for our tourism amenity over here, we're going to add a tea house. Moving over from the Northeastern Inn, I want to reconsider what's happening right here with the roads. This doesn't make a ton of sense. So we are going to extend this block straight through and do a whole bunch of blasting. And now that we've done that, I want to add a police station. But I want to go with one that's going to be a little bit unusual, the US Northeast Police Station. I'm going to try to turn it like this. And this gives us space to landscape in front of it, ideally. And I'm just going to place a variety of smaller tourism amenities in this area, like the steakhouse, the lobster tail, which we'll have to build around, the Heath Pub and Lounge. And then back here, I'm going to place a community pool and a basketball center. And we've already made the space back here, so I figure we'll throw a small chirper park back here as well. I think I want to rethink these blocks right here so that maybe we could fit a larger asset in. So I'm going to eliminate this road right here and this one right here. And then to make this look a bit more reasonable, we'll do something like that. Just kind of completes the circulation pattern. Now I'm going to see if there's a way that I can fit the Oasis kitchen right here. It has this nice angular side. And if I play my cards right, I'm guessing I can fit that right here. Or maybe right here. Maybe this is a more appropriate spot. And I'll see if I can fit the Canopy Cafe right here instead. And then at the end of the community over here, we're going to be placing our Gusto Gelato, as well as a park, the Dockyard Lounge and Park. And while we're over here, there's one more city service that I want to place, an elementary school. This community is absolutely going to need one. And I'll go with the community elementary school because it's fairly small and has a decent size capacity. Still, we're going to need to modify our roadway network for it. And I think that that's all looking pretty darn good. The one thing, this is going to be really nitpicky, I'm wondering if we can mirror the angle right here with Heather Lane. And that was super extra, but now it feels like it's planned and not just something that randomly happened, so I like it a ton more. And there are two final tourism assets that I want to add. I want to add the Eclipse Nightlife and the Horizon Lounge. Now, Eclipse Nightlife is a little bit bigger than Horizon Lounge, so I'm going to place this first. I'm going to try to shoehorn this in right about here. And there we go, right across the street from one another. And I had to move the tea house to make this work, but this would be a really lively area now as a result of these new amenities. I'm also going to get rid of that awkward little stub right there. No need for that. And then we've got to wrap up by thinking about the rest of the city service needs in this area. Number one would be communication services. We need a post office. I think I'm going to go with the Japanese post office, and we'll place that somewhere near a main drag, if not right on it. We're also going to need the internet here, so I'm going to place a radio mast. And for this one, I think I'm going to place it fairly high up, maybe right over here. And then finally, we have to have some sort of death care option. And for this, I think we can only go for the smallest one that's available to us, the French crematorium. So I'm going to place this kind of on a side street, and we'll try to hide this as we build the rest of our downtown. And with our tourism amenities in place, let's move on to adding our zoning. Before we build anything, I feel like there's value in mentioning that this entire community is about 30 blocks in total. So if we were to zone things in, it would take us maybe 2 or 3 minutes and we'd be completely done filling things in. But I feel like that would be doing a disservice to this community. It is a tourist town after all, and oftentimes in tourist towns, they really care about the aesthetics of the community. So much so that many of them have a form-based zoning code or zoning code that dictates the way buildings should look, sometimes more so than what should be in there. So I want to emulate that. So while we will zone some things in, I'm going to be doing a lot of plopping. And I'm going to be thinking about the way that the buildings look and how they interact with one another. So to that end, I want to have lower density uses over here and taper our densities as we get closer to the focal point of our downtown. So we're going to have mostly row homes before transitioning into some mixed density and some medium density. And then we have one tower right here, which I imagine would have condos for people who visit on the weekend. Then we'll immediately transition back down to medium density and mixed residential before exiting town with a bunch of row homes and maybe even a motel. Now on the hillsides, we will add a couple of roads and we'll have some single family homes up there as well, but we'll probably stick to 2x2 single family homes and nothing larger. Now I mentioned that we're going to be plopping a lot of our assets. And before we do that, we've got to make a couple of changes in settings. First is going to be to find it. This was pointed out to me on a stream recently. I didn't realize that you could assign a random asset hotkey. And if you do this, you save yourself a ton of time when you're plopping things. So I'm going to absolutely do this. I'm going to assign L as my random button. And what this will allow me to do is if inside of find it, if I have a search query set up and I hit L, it's now going to randomly select assets. So this is a huge benefit, a huge time saver when you know that you have the right selection. You just want to fill in a block and you don't want the buildings to look the same. Our second change is going to be in Plop the Growables. For this build only, I want to make sure that we're locking building levels when we're plopping. And that's because if we're carefully selecting buildings, I don't want them to randomly level up and completely change their form. Then as we begin, I just want to point out that I'm not going to be wed to anything that I've done so far. So if I see a mistake, I'm going to make a change because I already know that I've made one. Right here, for instance, this park should not be facing in this direction. We want the pretty side of this building facing Main Street. So we're going to spin it around. That is much better. And thinking of this asset, we actually need some parking for it. So I decided to place that right here and then add a park in front of it. It's still attached to the road. That is beautiful. We're going to add some row homes right here, and these are all going to be 2 units by 2 units deep, so I think that we can probably just spawn these in. But I will add one more street right here. And I've added a gap right here so we could add a little bit of landscaping in between the homes and this parking lot so that headlights wouldn't shine into the home's windows. I think right about here is where we have to have our first plopped buildings. And I've basically searched for the exact same buildings that I'm zoning in, and then I'll just use the L button to randomly place these. And my hope was that these would better conform to the road, but it still looks like they followed the zoning grid. I'll just move it and make it feel a bit more natural. And this looks pretty good, but it really highlights to me how bad this elementary school looks. So I think I'm going to replace this with something that's not quite so tall. And we'll go with our small elementary school instead. We do lose a bit of capacity, but honestly, I think it's worth it for the sake of aesthetics. Now I want to think about the blocks behind these row homes, and I want to start building on the hillside. So I'm going to build a road that goes up just a little ways. And then so we have enough space to build, I'm going to grade on the road. And I want my brush size to be a 50 because that will encompass both the road and the homes on either side of it. Or at least in theory it should. And I've spent a bit of time with these single family homes ensuring that the lot spacing makes a bit more sense, and I think that that looks really good. So back here, we'll go with some slightly deeper lots for our row homes. I want to do something very similar over here to what we just did on the other side. And what I'm thinking is we'll carve into the hillside once again. And I want to break up all these row homes with maybe one neighborhood serving park. Now we've got this awkward parcel right here where if we were just to place some row homes and face them towards Main Street, I think it would feel fairly uncomfortable to live there. So I'm going to face the buildings internal to each other and have a pedestrian street in between. And these are not going to grow correctly, so I will need to plop these ones. And I think that this looks really, really good. And now it feels like a special place, not like a forgotten about place. Perfect. Now let's transition into some medium density. And I'm going to try zoning this location right here, but this curve right here is going to require me to do a little bit of plopping. So for these, we're going to go with some of our southwestern medium density. And I want these to be 2 units deep. I'll be very deliberate with the corner piece right here. And then I think right here, we'll go with some medium density, but I'm going to manually select them. So I've narrowed this down to just the 2 unit deep medium density buildings. We could go with a 4 unit deep building, but I want to reserve that for a little bit further down. I'll begin with corner pieces. And there we go. I think that that feels pretty good. And all we have to do is plop one of our smallest parking structures right here, parking lots rather. And that is perfect. Now for this parcel right here, I am going to try to find a 4 unit deep building and see if we can find one that has 4-sided architecture. And you can see that all of these top ones right here are pretty good. This one, what I mean by 4-sided architecture is that it's going to look good on all sides. Some of these do not. Like this one is very plain from the sides and the rear. That's not going to be good enough for me. So we'll go with this. And I'm going to scoot this over just a little bit because I'm going to upgrade this side street to have parking. And we'll just bump our steakhouse back a little bit. Now behind here, before we move on, I want to add even more of our row homes. I caught myself. I was smoothing all of these cliff sides right here, and I need to not do that. We'd have to imagine that they would have blasted out to build these units here, so we should be okay having some sheer cliffs. It's going to be just fine. Now, the other thing I've done over here is I've tried to break these up just a little bit so it feels like these were developed as one cohesive structure. So I'm going to try to remember to do that as I'm building the rest of these as well. Now let's turn our attention back over here. And one thing I want to do is figure out a park for this little spot right here. Feels like it could be a really unique amenity if we allow it to become one. And was this a little bit much for this park? Probably. Do I regret it? Not in the slightest. This was a ton of fun to build, so I'm glad that we have it now. Now, for the area around this, we need to add a bit more housing. So I'm going to add some row homes along here, maybe bring some people into the park. And then right here, we're going to zone in some of our urban promenades buildings. And I've kind of been agonizing about what to put right here. And I think that what we should do is another park. When in doubt, in this community, add a park. And I'm pretty pleased with how all of these buildings filled in. I think that that is a nice looking block. One thing I'm not super pleased about is this road right here. This should probably have sidewalks, so I will upgrade this. And that is much better in my opinion. Another thing I want to change over here is this post office. I think it's too ugly to have on Main Street, so I'm going to move it right here next to this park. And now we get to Main Street, and here's where things get interesting. So I'm going to go with some mixed use buildings, and I'll go 2 units deep right here. And it looks like I need to scoot this over just a little bit if I want something to spawn there. And I'll do the exact same thing on this side. And I did that because I want to have a 4-unit building right here. We're going to see what that one looks like, if we have to rotate it or not. It might turn out just fine. Now right here, I'm going to add a pocket park. And that's a little bit janky, but I think it's probably as good as it gets here. The one thing I can do to make this look a little bit better is add a tree and a bit of landscaping along the buildings. It hides a bit of the jank. While these are filling in, I'm noticing that a bunch of these assets don't have parking. So our pool has no parking, this has no parking, this right here has no parking, our lobster shop. So we are going to need to add parking behind this block. And I'm hoping that this long parking lot fits perfectly. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. And then once again, more mixed use right here. Now this is what I was afraid of. This building looks terrible here. It actually shouldn't be facing Wooddale Lane, and it doesn't have 4-sided architecture. So I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board on this one, and I won't be afraid to find my own. Now this one does not have 4-sided architecture, which is a little bit of a shame, but I feel like it fits the aesthetic of this area, at least this side of the street. It feels more historic, and as a result, we have a matching building. And honestly, I think I might do the exact same thing over here, which gives us the opportunity to add a bit of parking behind these buildings. And I can even take our steakhouse and tighten this right up against the building, which fixes our little park over here much, much, much better. And once again, I've spent more time than probably makes sense on a teeny tiny park in the corner. I said it was good enough, and of course I had to change it to this cafeteria park. And honestly, I think it looks a ton better. I want to pick up the pace a bit, and I'm going to switch things up and go with some of our northeastern mid-rises. So we're going to have a few of those right here. We'll go for our northeastern mixed housing, and I will change this up as it makes sense. And actually, this block probably shouldn't be, mostly because we have this this building that looks like it should be in the southwest, or like it could be in the southwest. And this has all turned into a bit of a mess. And this is what happens when you zone things. You can see that my buildings are not facing in the correct direction. It is easy to fix because we have Move It, but this is precisely why we are doing it. And I think that that looks a ton better. Now this building just doesn't work. It's not a corner piece. This one we've turned into a corner piece. What I think I'm going to do is eliminate that. We'll pull this one up just a little bit. And then I'm going to grab my own building to place right here. And I feel like something like this makes this whole area feel much more complete. That is much nicer. And the rest of these were kind of big fails, but I have ideas on how to fix them. So for this one, I think having a park in the corner might salvage this. Right here, we just need to go back to the drawing board entirely. And I have an idea. I want to use some of the row homes from the Northeast. I'm going to go 3 units deep. And then I want to do something on this side as well. So I'm going to place 2 of these. And I think I want to have a cut through here. And for our cut through, I'm going to use one of these modern pocket parks, but I need to find one that's long enough. That is perfect. And if I give it some space, it feels like it was purposely placed here. That is fantastic. Now, one thing I would like to do for these townhomes, which don't have any parking, is find some parking. And I'm wondering if I can take this small parking lot and somehow position this to work. I think if I were to do that, I would have to completely contort these though. And that's not something that I'm willing to do. Or I could do something like this and kind of justify creating this parking lot by having a couple more lots right here. And it just adds more density, makes it feel more alive. I like that a lot. I think that this block is irredeemable, so I'm going to get rid of everything here. And we'll add more of these, though now we need parking once again. And I think I'll place this one more time and again, pull it into the road. And I think for this block, I'm going to do something completely custom. And that's because I noticed that the zoning grid is pretty broken right here. And now we're finally at our high density parcel. And I will admit that I have been agonizing about what to place here. Initially, I was thinking that we would just place some southwestern high density buildings. They're very nice looking, but they all have 1 or 2 blank walls and it just doesn't look right here. So I think that the right approach is likely to place a signature building. Many of these are standalone and they're very attractive. They'll add to the well-being in the area and make this an even more vibrant place. But the problem is I'm not going to be able to unlock most of these. Like the Polaris Suites right here, very easy one to unlock, 500 cells of medium density housing buildings. The problem is it's specifically North American medium density housing. So I will not unlock this one because I don't plan on using that zoning category in this build. And it's like that with many of these. So I think I'm going to forgive myself for that and place these anyway. And if you're wondering how to do that, if you have Find It installed, you have the ability to just search for signature buildings. Select signature buildings as your zoning type, and now you're able to find these. So the Gatehouse Residences right here feels like a really fancy apartment building, and that is the vibe that I want to go for. I feel like this is the kind of amenity that you might expect to see in a place like this, a really ornate looking apartment building. And I feel like this would attract a lot of investment into this area. So I feel like this is the right choice. It also has solar panels. It just feels like it's modern, but also pretending to be historic, which I think is pretty cool. Now to make this look a little bit better, I will add a key wall right here, which will flatten this out. And I think that that's just, it's a ton better. And if we want it to look completely perfect, we can attempt to slope there. We couldn't really do the trick. I'll just probably add some trees or something of that nature, which will make it look completely fine. Now, the other thing I want to do is look at the sidewalks here and see if I can make these look nicer. And I think that that looks really nice right here. And it's not too tall. It's not overwhelming, yet it still is a high density building with 144 households, which is perfect. Across the street from here, I want to have some more mixed use housing and maybe even a couple of our row homes once again. So I added some more row homes right here, but this is about as far over as we can go. Otherwise, we're going to start having some conflicts with this road. And as far as what I want to do on this road, I think I'm going to do basically nothing. We're going to add another roadway connection down to this road right here, add some single family homes, and then likely add some around these couple cul-de-sacs as well. Now we've got our last few blocks here. This one right here is going to be medium density, and then we're going to taper down quickly down to our row homes for the rest of the way out. And now that I think about it, we don't have any offices in this town, so I think I'm going to add some back here so we have a little bit of employment in this area. So a little peek behind the curtain. That stuff I just built, in my time, that was 4 hours ago, and I had to step away. I started to feel like I was losing the plot, like things weren't making sense anymore, like I was doing too much all at once. And now that I've stepped back and taken a look at this, I realized that I've made a number of mistakes. There were some things that I had originally planned to have in this area that I completely abandoned. Things like motels. I wanted to have a diner. I wanted to have a gas station. I wanted to have a grocery store. I wanted to have some auto-oriented commercial uses, and I missed all of those. And there are some assets that I meant to place in this area that I completely forgot. So I'm going to call a fairly substantial mulligan on everything that we just placed. Or not everything, but many things that we just placed in between the theater and this roundabout. And I've got to tell you, I think that this looks about 100 times better. And it's a good demonstration to me that if you're feeling like you're running out of ideas, you probably just need to take a step back. If you come back a little bit later, you'll come up with some really interesting things, which I think that we've come up with here. Now, there's one other location that we've got to revisit because the development didn't fill in the way it was supposed to. We've got one block right here that just looks a little off. And I think it's because, yeah, we missed zoning right here. So I'm going to go back to the drawing board on this one. And we'll zone this with southwestern mixed use. And this isn't necessarily the prettiest building in the world, and I don't love the blank facade right here, but I think that the scale of it is much more appropriate for this area, and I'm glad that we're not seeing a bunch of grass. And with our zoning complete, let's move on to adding our transit connections. Now that the bones of the community are in place, we need to bring people to it. And for that, I'm envisioning 2 regional bus routes and 1 local taxi service. And we'll begin with the taxi service. I'm going to call a mulligan on 4 row homes that we just built right here, and we're going to replace those with a taxi depot. And though I definitely prefer the aesthetics of the townhomes, I think that this will provide a valuable service for this community. For our regional bus routes, things are going to be fairly basic. Our first route will connect right here at our bus terminal to our new outside connection, which is Marble Mountain. And then I want to make sure that we're not throwing too many buses at this. These will all be coming from Segunda Beach. They will have a significant amount of deadhead or non-revenue service. And it looks like right now we have 3 buses. That's way more than we need. We'll take it down to just 1. And I was thinking of lowering the ticket price, but honestly, that's not realistic. So we're going to leave it at $8. Next, I want to make our connection into Segunda Beach. So we'll add our first stop right here. And then I want to control where this route is going. And I know that I want to have a stop right here at our state park. I'm going to add a control point right here for the time being, and we're going to do a bit more work here in just a moment. And then from the state park, our next stop is going to be way over here at the harbor. Then we'll loop back around, have another stop here at the state park before wrapping things up here in Lake Valley. So now let's create our connection into the park. And for this, I'm imagining that we could do something fairly simple. We could probably loop right up into the park where this turnaround is. So I will add a stop right here. And then we're just going to grab our bus line that's right here and pull it right into the park like this. This isn't the most efficient way of running this bus route, but I do think it would probably be the safest way, and it would be the most comfortable way for a park visitor to actually visit the park. We're also not building a whole bunch of pedestrian facilities demanding that people walk across the highway or crazy things like that. So this is probably a pretty good solution. But I am going to connect this in twice, so it will slow things down regardless of the way that you're going. And I'm doing this because if you're coming from the harbor, now you could visit the state park first rather than going into the city and looping back around. Coming back over here to our bus station, we can see that we don't have enough buses for our route, so let's adjust our routes. And one of the big reasons for that is it looks like this new route has 8 buses. I'm going to take this down to as few as possible, which will be 5. And with that, we can operate this route. And before we move on from public transit, I just wanted to point out that one of these routes is not like the others. The Segunda Beach, San Martin Obispo, and Presidio Bay route is 40 kilometers long and has 10 buses. Though it has very high ridership, there are some issues with this route that I feel like we have to fix right now, because right now it's not actually interfacing with our new regional service. So basically, because this route is so long, it has 10 vehicles assigned to it, and that's the absolute minimum that we can assign to it. So this route starts way over here, goes all the way into Segunda Beach, does a whole bunch of crazy looping through here, and then exits towards Presidio Bay right here. So I just want to clean things up as it's happening right here in downtown Segunda Beach. And you can see that there's a lot of nonsense happening, and that's because this bus route's been brought and kind of drugged through time and redesigns of the city's roadway network. So I think that the easiest solution here is going to be just to grab this route and link it up right here at the harbor and then get rid of all of these other looping connections. These used to exist for a reason, but right now local service covers all of these movements. So there's really no reason to have our regional service doing this. We also have our regional service for some reason jetting down here. I think that we were doing that because at one point in time when we had the bypass, it made sense to do that. But right now, doesn't make a lot of sense. And then finally, we're not actually connecting up at the harbor for both directions of our service. So I will make sure that we're doing that. And then for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to run this down what I believe is the most logical street. And basically run all of that transit service down one street, which I think makes a ton more sense. Now, interestingly, that hasn't really shaved much length off from our bus route, but it has shaved off one bus, so I'm going to count that as a win. And then finally, I just wanted to take one quick look at our bus depot to see how much bus capacity that we have, and we don't really have much at all. You can see that we've got one bus sitting right here, and we look at our vehicles in use, 23 out of 25. Now that is a problem because if we have any buses break down, we won't have any replacements. So I think this is the time to expand our bus depot. So I'm going to add the garage extension in the back. And then just knowing that this bus depot is basically complete, I decided to add a thick row of landscaping because these buses would be loud, there'd be a lot of vibrations, and that would be a way to separate this area from the surrounding neighborhood. And then finally, my game plan is to let this run for a couple of minutes to see where our ridership shakes out. But before we do that, I realized we don't have the taxi stop upgrade here. And considering that is our main local service for this community, I feel like we've got to add that. And after watching this for a few minutes, a couple of things are painfully apparent to me. For every 10 buses that go to Marble Mountain, we get one that goes to Segunda Beach. That is a problem because we are not clearing our queue here. And then this whole line right here, that's all people that are trying to catch a taxi. We just don't have enough of them. So we're going to try to resolve both of these things. First, this bus route, we're going to assign a couple more buses here. We should have a few extra available now. And you can see that our line usage is 90%. So these extra buses will get used. And then over here at our taxi depot, I want to make a couple of modifications. I want to add on the garage extension. This will give us 4 more vehicles. And then I'm also going to add on the dispatch center. This will allow people to be picked up from all over the city. My only reservation with this is that if we're not careful, we'll end up dispatching all of our vehicles to Segunda Beach. So we are going to need to district things out. And now we have Lake Valley, a quaint community of about 3,500 residents that is wealthy, which is not surprising. So now I'm going to assign some services, in particular this one right here. So now this will only operate as a local service. I'm going to do the exact same thing with our crematorium. I only want that to operate here. Same thing with our health coverage and our police coverage, considering it's not a very large service. Now, we've got a heck of a queue right here, so I'm going to come back at the end of the episode to see if this has died down at all, but I have a feeling that things are going to improve. And with our transit service in place, let's move on to a bit of landscaping and detailing. For our landscaping and detailing today, basically everything is on the table save for one thing. I want to make sure that we maintain some of these cliff textures, so I'm going to try my best not to remove them, and I might even restore some that I've inadvertently removed while I've been building. Outside of that, everything else is on the table, so if I've missed parking, if I need to remove trees on the street, I will do that, and we're going to go block by block to try to make sure that this place feels as complete as possible. We're going to start on this end of town and work our way to the other end. So with our guidelines in place, let's get landscaping. And after 2 hours of landscaping and detailing, this is the net result, and honestly, I am absolutely in love with this community. I've spent a ton of time on this. Every single parcel has been adjusted. Every single lot has had a tree planted on it. I've even taken the time to plant trees on some roofs like this one right here, which I think just looks really, really cool. And that is what a community like this you'd expect to see. You'd expect to see a lot of care and attention to every single building. I don't know that I've ever detailed a community this much all at once, but the result, man, I just think it looks really, really good. Really, really vibrant, lots of activity. And one thing I have noticed is that the taxis over here, the queue is gone. Things seem like it's working from a transportation standpoint, and things just look great aesthetically. So with all of this complete, there's only one more thing left to do. That's take inventory of what we've done with a brief city tour. Listen, I know that I've been saying this a lot lately, but this is one of my favorite builds ever in City Skylines 2. And I've been having a lot of fun with this game lately, and I hope that it's reflecting in the videos. It's just been an absolute blast putting these builds together. I know that they've been taking me a little bit longer, but I've been putting a little bit more work and effort into them and a little bit more planning than I normally do. And it's really elevated the game for me. So I really hope that you've been enjoying these most recent videos. It's been a little bit different, but I've really been enjoying everything I've been building. So, and I hope that you've been enjoying it as well. Now, before we end things, I did want to show you a little bit about this area. One of the things that's a little bit disappointing is that the hotels aren't really attracting all that many people. We've got 8 people staying here. We've got nobody staying at a 3-star country hotel. And I don't believe that we actually have anyone at these 2 hotels. Yeah, no companies at all. So that is a bit unfortunate. I'm hoping things turn around. When we take a look at our tourism, you can see that this is an incredibly desirable area. It's just not attracting people right now, but it is making money. We are in the green. Things have turned around from a budgetary standpoint. Even though it's not always $25,000 per hour in the green, we are seeing that the general trend is that we're going in the right direction. And when we look at our city statistics, we can see that there are tourists coming to our city. There's a seasonality, and maybe what we're seeing right now is that we're at a low point in the tourism for our community. And before we go, editor Phil Cunningham here, because I wanted to let you know that I did go ahead and rename every single street in this area. I've renamed a couple of the buildings, and I made sure that I adjusted the garbage budget. That's why we're not making quite as much money. We were having lots of garbage collection issues. So now when you take a look at the save, you're going to see that things are looking pretty darn good. But either way, I still think that this community is awesome. It feels really alive. It feels really vibrant. It feels really active. I think that it's beautiful. I've really enjoyed putting it together, and I really hope that you've enjoyed watching me do so. Because for now, I think that we're going to leave it here. And I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I want to thank you so much for your time today. There's a million things that you could have been doing. You decided to hang out with me and build a warmer version of Park City, Utah. And for that, I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. Remember, I'm uploading all of my saves to Paradox Mods. Link is in the video description if you want to check this out for yourself. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.